You are listening to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, providing those with a desire to grow with the simple and consistent actions needed to master personal development and create a life they yearn for. I am your host, 𝗂𝗍𝗃, and my mission is to inspire you to grow, stand out, and take action towards a purposeful and fulfilling life. Today's a different episode. It's a brief solo episode, which is also an announcement about a forthcoming change in the schedule of the podcast. And I will start with this actually, but first, can you believe that it is the second half of 2022 already? That the first half of the year is gone already. It's crazy. I feel it is incredible. So, coming back to what I was saying, this episode 239 is the last Thursday episode I will do for a while. In other words, from next week, the podcast will become weekly and we'll have one episode every Monday. So, for the next few weeks, there won't be any episodes on Thursdays. And I want to share with you a few words about my why, the reasons behind my decision to do this. So, in March 2020, which was a couple of months after I had launched the podcast, that was the time when the lockdowns started around the world. And from that time on, I have consistently been publishing 2 episodes every week up to now. So here we are after 2.5 years and 230 episodes down the line. Seeing all the success the podcast had and reaching now close to 50,000 downloads, I realized, or actually I wondered, whether this amount of content that I'm creating, so the 2 episodes a week, whether it is too much for you, for the listener to follow. I am acutely aware that in the age we live in, we are drowning in information. So I want to ensure that I'm not just generating more information. As you have undoubtedly heard me say before, my mission is to inspire you to take action. It's not to provide more information. It's about transformation. So, if my listeners' need and capacity is to engage with the podcast once a week, this is something that I have to take into consideration. One other reason I'm stepping back to 1 episode a week is because I feel the need to reflect and also look ahead, look at where the podcast is going and what new iteration or version of the podcast is going to emerge next. So I consider now Personal Development Mastery to be in the version 2 of it. It has been in this version 2 for around 10 months now, when I introduced the 𝗂𝗄𝗃 special feature and the consolidation episodes, and I openly spoke about my political views. But now I know there is a version 3, a next version waiting to emerge. So I will allow my creative juices to run and envision this 3rd version, this following iteration of the podcast, for whenever the right time for that to happen is. These are some of the reasons why I've decided to step back into doing 1 episode a week rather than 2, and I wanted, of course, to share them with you. You might ask me, for how long? That's a great question. I don't know exactly yet. a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, and I will certainly keep you updated during the next podcast episodes. And two last things that I will mention today before the end of the episode. One is I would like to make some clarifications about my supporters community. I've had some questions coming from you, and I will take just a minute now to explain some things, and I hope that you find it useful. So, about the additional exclusive content you can find in my patrons community, there are 2 episodes every month, 2 additional podcast episodes a month, and one of them is a consolidation episode. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you probably are familiar with that. You have encountered the consolidation episodes before, where I revisit the previous episodes and consolidate a topic or an idea, sharing the expert opinions of my guests on that topic. So I have done about 20 of these episodes previously, and I'm going to carry on doing them and presenting them, but inside my supporters community. Another kind of exclusive content you will find there is live Ask Me Anything podcast episodes, in which you can participate as the audience and ask me questions. As a bonus also, when you join the community, you gain access to my 10-module online course that gives you a blueprint for personal development. And there are also virtual meetups every month and participation in my mindset and accountability mastermind group, again once a month. So I hope this gives you more of a clearer idea of what additional content you can expect to find in my supporters community. The link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM supporter. Finally, make sure you tune in next Monday for episode 240, where you're about to learn some of the amazing story behind 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 Hansen and Chicken Soup for the Soul. I spoke with the author of his biography book called Relentless, which is just published, about the inspirational story of how Mark went from bankrupt and almost suicidal to being in the Guinness Book of World Records for selling 500 million books. It's one of the best podcast interviews I've done. And the last thing I wanted to mention before I sign off today is the service that I offer, helping coaches to create, launch and grow their podcast, even if they are limited on time and are not tech savvy. So if you have been thinking about starting a podcast, send me a message. To recap, this episode today is the last Thursday episode I'm going to do for a while. Starting next week, the podcast will become weekly and have one episode every Monday, for a little while at least. I want to thank you sincerely for your support, for listening to the podcast, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you. I truly hope you enjoy listening and you are getting value and transformation from it. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in.